Boy, are they throwing the book at this guy, Mangione, for what he allegedly did, the death penalty for a targeted killing of one individual, allegedly. No criminal background. Seems like a different standard of justice, wouldn't you say? Let's go down the list.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio, Tumwa, Iowa. Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up.
Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. Major breaking news in the case of Luigi Mangione, the alleged shooter of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. As Mangione's attorneys have long suspected and feared, Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, has officially announced that the federal government will be seeking the death penalty against Mangione for his alleged shooting and murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in December of last year. Attorney General Pam Bondi is directing federal prosecutors to seek the death penalty for Luigi Mangione if he is convicted of the December murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. She announced in a statement Tuesday, one of the federal charges against Mangione, murder through a use of a firearm, makes him eligible for the death penalty if convicted. Quote from Bondi: Mangione's murder of Brian Thompson, an innocent man and father of two young children, was a premeditated, cold-blooded assassination that shocked America. After careful consideration, I have directed federal prosecutors to seek the death penalty in this case as we carry out President Trump's agenda to stop violent crime and make America safe again. We'll get back to that in a second. Quote, as alleged, Mangione planned his attack for months and stalked his victim for days before murdering him, methodically planning when, where, and how to carry out his crime. Then Attorney General Merrick Garland said at the time, in the federal case, Mangione hasn't entered a plea. He is due back in federal court on April 18th. I should also add that there has been no official federal indictment from a federal grand jury against Mangione, despite the federal murder charges. I am not surprised. I am not shocked. But I do want to point out, and we have been leading the coverage of this since it happened, not only on Mangione's case, but keeping in the news the predatory, murderous, for-profit health insurance industry that Status Coup has been covering as long as we've been alive, for 7 years. We've covered the fight for Medicare for all. We've covered fraud from the predatory health insurance companies. We covered the daily murder they're committing, United Health and all the rest of them. But I do want to point out, separate whatever you think of Luigi Mangione, whether you support what he did, and a lot of people do, whether you don't support what he specifically allegedly did, but understand the motivation, or whether you are against him. Put all that aside for a second. Boy, are they throwing the book at this guy, Mangione, for what he allegedly did, the death penalty for a targeted killing of one individual, allegedly, no criminal background. Seems like a different standard of justice, wouldn't you say? Let's go down the list, shall we? The last decade or so. Did one banker from JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, all the criminal banks, did one banker get a parking ticket, much less criminal charges for tanking the global economy, which killed people? People died as a result of foreclosures, being evicted, and all sorts of dominoes from the global financial crash that harmed millions of Americans. Anybody go to jail for that? Anybody even face a jury? Charged criminally? No. How about the Sackler family, that killed hundreds of thousands of Americans through their basically cocaine-infused pills known as OxyContin, hooked people to the point of overdoses? Did the Sacklers face criminal charges? The death penalty? No, they're rich, so they got off with some fines. How about Flint, Michigan, which 11 years later, is still in crisis, still has toxic water, despite the bullshit you've heard from the mainstream media. I've been there and I've reported 21 times in Flint, including my book last year, We the Poisoned, exposing the Flint water cover-up and the poisoning of 100,000 Americans. Water's still toxic 11 years later. No one has gone to prison, and no one will go to prison because the Attorney General of Michigan, a Democrat, sabotaged the criminal investigation. So the government officials and private actors who poison poor people, majority black, no one will see a day in prison, much less face the death penalty. How about the fossil fuel companies that have poisoned our water through leaks, that have poisoned our air, poisoned our soil, killed animals through their oil leaks, given illnesses to humans? Any of them face criminal penalties, much less the death penalty? Not a one. So whatever you think of Luigi Mangione and what he allegedly did, boy, is there a different standard. Boy, is there a different standard, huh? If a member of the club gets offed, if a United Healthcare CEO making $10 million a year gets taken care of, so to speak, if a United Healthcare CEO who was deploying artificial intelligence to speed up and increase denial of life-saving health care at a 90% error rate, if he gets killed, which I've been clear, not telling anyone to go get your guns. We're not endorsing, murder here. But as JFK said, when you make peaceful revolution impossible, violent revolution is inevitable. That's not an endorsement of violence. That's just the facts. When you keep your knee on the masses for so long, eventually they fight back. But they're throwing the book at this guy. Terrorism charges in the state of New York, despite I haven't met one person. I've interviewed a lot of people over this that were scared, much less terrorized by what Luigi Mangione did. The health insurance industry was. Wall Street was. The Fortune 500 companies that were flooding the lines for private security companies, they were scared because after this happened, it was reported over and over that private security, their phones were off the hook with an increase in demand from wealthy corporate clients wanting enhanced security. They were scared, but not the masses, not the people who normally terrorism applies. So crash the global economy, kill people through that. You're not getting charged with anything, no death penalty. You'll get your bonuses too. Poison a whole city, get out of jail free card. Send poison pills all over America, kill hundreds of thousands, maybe more. You're rich. We'll give you a fine. Because the politicians, by the way, stopped the DOJ from doing anything real against the Sacklers. I mean, this is just 3 or 4 things. We could go down the list. What corporations, the government have done to Native Americans, no criminal charges, no death penalty. Done to brown people. Not just Trump, by the way. We're talking before Trump. All presidents. What we did in Guantanamo. Bush, he's free painting right now. He's not going to prison. He's not facing criminal charges. He gets to paint and have puff pieces about him in mainstream media. As his administration violated the Constitution, launched a war on lies, killed hundreds of thousands of people across the world, in addition to the U.S. soldiers killed, the U.S. soldiers who committed suicide as a result, the U.S. Soldiers maimed, wounded. So sure seems if you are a high-priced corporate executive, health insurance, fossil fuel industry, big pharma, Silicon Valley, you name it, you're fine. You commit crimes, we'll take care of you. But if you actually commit a crime against one of those people, we're going to make an example of you. I also want to show, this was Mangione's attorney, Karen Friedman-Agnivolo. This was her outside the courthouse at one of his appearances. I believe this was in February. I was there. Let's listen, because she actually talked about how the deck was stacked against them. Remember, he's got the state of New York criminal case against him, the federal case against him, which it was quite surprising there even was a federal charges brought against him, since this happened in New York. By the way, Dylan Roof, the South Carolina shooter who gunned down 9 people in a church, a black church, he wasn't charged with terrorism, but Mangione is. Isn't that interesting? But let's listen to his lawyer, because she points out the obstacles that are being thrown in their way and the fact that he faced the death penalty. Obviously, this was before today's announcement that the feds will go after him with the death penalty.
First, I want to start by talking about the fact that Luigi Mangione remains in federal custody, where he is being prosecuted in 3 jurisdictions: by the federal government, by New York State, and by Altoona, Pennsylvania. But he's being held in federal custody, and the Department of Justice has refused to allow him to be in state custody, despite the fact that they've all agreed that the state court is going to go first. Now, this is problematic for several reasons. Number one, the federal government is still considering whether to execute Luigi and considering whether to seek the death penalty. So we are fighting that simultaneously while going first here in state court. And it impacts our ability to meet with him before court, after court. He's constantly surrounded by law enforcement. He's in shackles. He was wearing a vest today. Some looked like I don't even know what it looked like, but a very serious vest with his legs shackled and his arms shackled. And so he's being treated differently because he's being held in federal custody than any other person who would be facing serious murder 1 charges in New York State court. And I made a record in court today that I don't understand what this show of danger is for. When I go visit Luigi at MDC in Brooklyn, I sit with him. He is unshackled. He walks around freely in the visiting area. We sit in a room together without law enforcement hovering over us. But for whatever reason, here, despite all the law enforcement, they need him to be wearing this vest. They need him to be shackled, and they stand right over us, and we get no time with him. So he is being treated differently because of this unusual and, frankly, just the fact that he's being prosecuted by 3 jurisdictions for 1 event. It all is about one thing, one single event.
So that was her pointing out, I think rightly so, the difference in treatment. And now, again, he's facing the death penalty. Again, for allegedly what he did. He's innocent until proven guilty. But you see this kind of treatment, 3 different jurisdictions against him. You got the federal government coming in where they have not come in and charged federally for similar cases. If it was just somebody shooting down a normal person who's not making $10 million a year, who's not a for-profit health insurance predator, who, by the way, buy off the politicians. So it's all synergy. It's the government working on behalf of the private health insurance companies that essentially are their bosses, because we live in the United Corporations of America, and United Healthcare essentially have bought the government, just like Pfizer, just like Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, Vanguard, all the rest of it. It's vile. So this is much bigger. And let me know what you think. To me, this is much bigger than one man, Luigi Mangione. Of course, it's his life that will be at stake. But this is about predatory capitalism. This is about what kind of country are we? Are we a country that will continue to allow and normalize that anybody could die if they just don't have enough money for health care? If they don't have enough money in their wallet or account to get an MRI, to get that mammogram, to get that surgery, to get that preventative care? Is that normal? Is that okay for a humane and civilized society? I don't think so. We will continue to cover this important story on the ground. Please, please support us if you can. StatusCoup.com/join. I don't know any other outlet that has stayed on this story as fiercely and consistently as Status Coup, but we need your support. StatusCoup.com/join. We're hiring a new reporter too. We're independent. We don't have funding from United Healthcare or any of the rest. So we need your help. $5 a month, StatusCoup.com/join. Thanks.